Hello, hello. Hey, Ronald, Ronnie, Dave Garbett. Why did I say Galbert? I'm not sure. Garbett. Dave Gatton, Mr. Gatton, welcome. Hope y'all are doing well tonight. Let my see if I can get up in here in a full view. How is everyone's evening going so far? Hopefully well. Tonight I wanted to kind of recap on an earlier class that we did months and months back. I saw some posts in the Facebook group. A young lady was asking questions about like text-in-text designs and things, and I wanted to re-elaborate and touch on that, but I also wanted to share some different techniques and stuff. We're going to be using your offset tool. We're going to be working with vectors and text and shapes and stuff, and we're going to make a completely different class out of it than what was seen months ago. If any of you were in that class a while back ago, it's not going to be a rinse and repeat. Sorry about the heavy breathing in the background. That's my dog. She's decided to join us. So I'm hoping tonight's class will be interesting for you all, and yeah, so we'll get into it, and then we'll open up at the end of the class for some Q&A and go over some things. I know a lot of you have I've been trying to monitor the Facebook group. I've been away. I was up at the Chicago Vetric Conference. A lot of great little tips and tricks learned at the conference and stuff that I'll be passing along to you all in future classes and everything. Really some neat stuff that I didn't even know about within the Vetric software platform and stuff that we can talk about in future classes and all. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with y'all. But I was away for a while, so if anyone was trying to get a hold of me and couldn't, I'm back now. And so sorry about the Thursday night class versus Monday. We'll try to better that one. Okay. All right. So I believe 7:14. Anybody that's going to pop in, they'll pop in a few moments. Welcome James and Alan and Donnie. And let's go ahead and get over into the Vetric program. Ta-da! And we'll go from there. All right, tonight's class I will be working in VCarve Pro. This is applicable to Desktop Pro and Aspire. What we're going to be talking about and discussing and everything. And for this project, we're going to do a couple of different sizes and things, but I'm going to go ahead and start off with about a 20-inch board that is going to be 7 1/4 inches wide and 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to be, now for me, I'm going to be using my wedge jig. So I will be touching off on the base of that jig, the MDF, so that is a representation of the bottom of the material, which is referred to as the machine bed for the 0 position. However, you guys, if you're used to touching off on the material surface, by all means do that. Just for my setup and my jig, I'll be working on the machine bed for the Z0 position. My XY datum position, because of the jig, everything is referenced off the bottom left corner, but again, if you guys work off the center or one of the other positions, that's fine as well. But we're gonna, for this project, I'm gonna work off the bottom left corner, and I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. We're gonna get in here now. For this first one, we're gonna do just a very simple sign, show the kind of the text and text procedure. But then we're gonna kind of mix it up, and we're gonna go with a little bit bigger sign, almost like a door hanger type situation, because we are getting into the holidays now. And those monogrammed door hangers and stuff like that, we're going to talk about that because it's going to be using very cool tools like our trim tool, offset tool, so on and so forth. So, but let's first kind of get into the like a text-in-text type design. And I don't have, unfortunately, because I lost all my files about 6 months ago, I don't have a picture reference to show you the text-in-text, but bear with me, you'll see it come out and come together, and it'll make sense in a moment. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create my border for this. So I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and I'm going to just snap. I'm going to use my smart snapping and smart geometry snapping here. And I'm just going to snap to the corner and drag a rectangle all the way to the opposing diagonal corner. And then I'm going to offset that rectangle, that selected rectangle. I'm going to offset it inward about 3/4 of an inch, making sure I got create sharp corners. I do not need this border on the outside, so I am going to delete that original vector and have it select the new one. And that'll give me this internal border here. And now I'm going to just pop back into my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to change the corner radius. I like the decorative corners and stuff, so I'm going to go with about a 3/4 inch radius on that and click apply just to get that nice decorative border. Now, for those of you that are new to this and everything, you do not have to do this way. There's multiple ways to achieve this. Now, by far the easiest way is the rectangle tool and using the internal radius if this, for this type of design and everything. But let's back up one instance here to the square corners, and bear with me a second. Always select your vector before you do that, and let's go back to square corners. Dadgummit. That'll work. Okay, now imagine if I wanted to create that same design in a different way. What are other ways that we can do this? We can do this by combining shapes and stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my draw circle tool, and I'm going to snap to this corner here, and I'm going to create a circle, and it's going to have a radius diameter of 0.75. Click apply. Actually, it wouldn't be 0.75. What would it be? It'd be about 1.5 radius. Diameter would be 1.5. Sorry, 1.5. Okay. Now, if I took this circle and I'm snapped right on that corner there, if I went into my mirror tool and I came in and create a mirror copy, flipping it about the job center, if I flip it horizontally, then vertically, and horizontally again, I get these 4 shapes, on here. And now, this technique, there's 2 ways to kind of do this. One is we can very simply use our trim tool, interactive trim tool. Under edit objects, the pair of scissors, we can come in here and just trim away these outer circles and things, okay, to create that shape. But now another way that we can do it is actually using the trim tool. So the trim tool allows me to well, there's a couple of tools, but I'm going to show you 2 more. The trim tool allows me to take a boundary, the last object I select, and either clear everything inside of that boundary away or clear everything outside of that boundary away. The second tool besides the trim tool is the subtract tool, which takes and allows me to subtract the second object that I select from the first. So let's look at the subtract tool first. So it subtracts the second object from the first. All right. And now, because these 2 are going to be kind of together and I want them to be looked at as one item, I need to group them together as one item. So if I group those 2 together, they're one item. All right. Now, to subtract, use the subtract tool. This subtracts the second selected vector from the first. Okay. So I want to take my border, being my first, and I want to subtract these circles from that being the second. And if I have them selected and I come over here and click this tool, it will remove those corners. Okay, so that's another way you can create those kind of radius effects and everything, and not just for radius effects, but just general shapes and things, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's undo that. And let's look at our trim tool, our regular trim tool. Now the trim tool takes and selects an object from the boundary, and the boundary being the last item you select. So once again, if I select my border, and then I hold down my shift key and I select my boundary, which are going to be these two circles here, and I clear everything inside of that boundary away, what's going to happen is it's going to redraw this shape and everything. My boundary is not going to be deleted like it would with the subtract tool or the scissor tool and everything. It's still going to be there. But if I delete them, then of course we end up with that same result. So there are three options for kind of getting to that same point. You know, you got your rectangle tool, which is very simply you choose the radius corners, tell it what size radius, and boom, you're done. Or you can subtract one shape from another or trim one shape around another. And so, you know, just wanted to kind of, for those of you who are new and just joining, just wanted to kind of stress that, or, you know, there's more than one way to get to an end result. Now, when I was talking about, you know, not just, you know, on these corners and everything, you know, when we're combining shapes and stuff, let's say that I wanted a, you know, a nice little arch or something on the sides or maybe across the top and bottom. Well, I mean, one of the things I could do is my oval tool here, ellipse tool, I can come over and find the center of my board. You'll see that by the little diagonal slash and our little crosshair that pops up, letting me know I'm in the center. And if I click there, I can then begin to kind of create my shape, whatever it may be. And I'm going to come out pretty wide-eyed. Now, if I take that shape and I mirror it, if I wanted to mirror it using the keyboard shortcuts, I can open up the mirror tool. But if I wanted to use the keyboard shortcuts, I could use my Control and Shift key, hold those two down, and hit the letter V for vertical to create that vertical V for vertical to create that vertical mirror. Or I could just open up the mirror tool and click vertical. Either one. Now, once again, let's imagine that these two are going to be my border. So if I select both of those, I want to group them together. So they're one item, so the software looks at them as one item. And on this sign, I'm going to, when I subtract one from the other, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of redraw it and create this kind of oval arch and things. Well, what if I want the arch to be outward? Then, of course, we wouldn't use any of those tools because all of those tools are going to create the arch inward. Meaning that if I come in here and select my border, and then I select my grouped items, and if I use the subtract tool, it's always going to subtract inward like it is there. Okay, it's always going to create that inward motion. If I undo that, if I used my trim tool and I clear inside of that boundary, it's always again going to create that inward motion. So we got to remember that when we're using those tools. So in this case, what I would end up doing is ungrouping these, and I would just simply use my interactive trim tool, and I would clear away, you know, these lines if this is the kind of shape that I want for my sign, which it's not. But again, just things to, you know, think about when you're combining shapes to create different, you know, looks and stuff. Okay. That being said, that has nothing to do with text and text. I just don't know why I went into that tangent, but I just wanted to talk about combining shapes and way we can create decorative borders and stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our text box. And now I'm going to use my boundary, my border here, when I'm drawing my text. And I'm going to use the draw text within a vector box option. So it's going to use this box, this rectangle here. It's going to use this as my border, but notice how it kind of creates the square corners. It doesn't look at radiuses. It's just the square width and height. This virtual box that it creates, and it throws it in there, 18.5 by 5 3/4. Now, let's see here. We're going to make this the Walton's home. Now notice as I type that in how it automatically, you know, came in, and I can, if I want to use wide borders for this, or margins should I say, normal margins or no margins at all, it's going to stretch it right out and everything. I want normal margins around here, but I'm going to end up making it a little bit bigger. but for right now, this will get me in the ballpark of where I want to be. Now I could, if I wanted to, I could use my stretch here. If I come in here and stretch the characters vertically and stretch the characters horizontally, it's going to give me more what I want. This large sign here close to the borders, but still having nice margins around it. If I had no margins, then it would stretch it to all 4 extents of that virtual box. But I'm going to use normal margins. This is what I want for my signs. Okay, and now similar to a text on text factor, we're going to write some text, and we're going to have one set of vectors, the middle text and all, on top of another. Now, one of the things I do want to do, I would like to go back into my text box for a moment, and I would like to make this bold. I'm going to give it just a little bit of meat, boldness, and everything. Now, everything looks good. I want to give myself a little bit of spacing between the A and the L. So I'm going to open up my edit text spacing tool, and I'm going to pop in here, hold down my shift key, and just pop that out once, twice, maybe a little bit here. Okay, the Waltons. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's get into the next layer. Now, you can create layers. You know, right now Walton's is on layer 1. I'll rename this, and I will call this our back text. Actually, yes, our back text. And then I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to call this border. You don't have to make layers for anything. And I'll give borders a little bit of a different color. And I'm going to take this border here, and I'm going to move it, right click on it and move it to the border layer. All right. And then my top text, I'll go ahead and create another layer, and I'm going to call this my top or center text or inner text, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it inner text since we're doing text in text. However you want to name it, that's up to you. And I am going to give this a different color so it kind of stands off from each other. And we're going to make it active by clicking on the name. It should be in bold. You should be able to read it up here. And let's go ahead, and now I'm going to use the regular draw text tool. And let's see here. Now, I want you to notice something. Okay, you see this box. This is new with 9.5. The text, as I start typing in text in here, you will see that text pops up where that box is. Now, the wonderful thing about this is I can take this anchor, and I can drag that box into different places and stuff where I want this text to kind of, you know, start or what have you. Now, I want to go ahead, and I'll get this box somewhere generally right about here, end up centering it in. But wherever we click that box or drag it to is where your text is going to be. So keep that in mind. I don't know if you can see that box pop up, but hopefully you can. That little blue box right there. All right, so we're going to make our text. We're going to go 1.5 inches tall, and notice how that box changes in there, you know, to show me where it's going to be. And I'm going to drag that down just a little bit, somewhere right about there. I'll end up centering it off in a minute. All right, so now Walton's. Let's see here. What do we want to do? I could do their first names. I could do a nice little quote. Walton's. Let's do. Might have to make my. Let's see. I'm trying to be creative here. Let's. What would we be if it was first name, last name? I'm not going to be that creative. We're going to go John. and Mary. All right, I was going to be creative, but then I decided against it because I'm a goofball. Okay, now I'm going to go with about 1.5 inches. That's going to be good there on the text. I'll stick with the Times New Roman. That's fine. And now I want to make sure that this is everything is kind of centered. So I will open up my alignment tool on that and make sure it is centered and all good there. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to have basically essentially two V carves. I'm going to have the Waltons being V carved, and then I'm going to have John and Mary kind of in the middle of it. And you want to be able to read it because it's not a text on text, it's a text in text. And so I need to decide where do I want to do this, dude. It doesn't have to be the center, you know. Would it look better if we were kind of down here where you could see and make out the A and everything and stuff, you know, and that might look good. So let's go there. Let's go right there. I like that. What I need to do is I need to offset John and Mary, our top text. Or our inner text, let's call it. I need to offset it outward to create a boundary that I'm going to trim to, just like we talked about a moment ago, trimming. So let's go ahead and open up our offset tool under offset and layout. And I want to offset outward, and it doesn't have to be a big distance, but I would like the boundary that gets created, I would like it to be somewhat outlined without a lot of divots and things. So I'm gonna go 1/8 of an inch, put that decimal in there, 1/8 of an inch offset. I do not want necessarily sharp corners. I do not want to delete the original. I'm just going to click offset and let's see what we've got here. So if we look, Mary and all is quite outlined, maybe not a wide enough offset for me. So let's go with a little bit wider offset. So I'm going to Control Z that, undo. You can also right click and click undo up here as well. But I'm gonna let's give ourselves a little bit more space. I'm gonna go 1/4 of an inch offset, and let's do that one more time, and that will be good. 1/4 of an inch. Let's see, is that too much? That might be too much. Let's. I don't want it too bulky. So what are we gonna do? 0.1875, 3/16. Let's click offset. There we go. Now for this offset, I really only need to focus on the outer boundaries. I don't necessarily need the inner these little inner vectors and all. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to hold down my shift key. Let's close our offset tool. I'm going to hold down my shift key and turn off the outside boundaries. And then all the rest that's selected, I'm just going to hit delete to get rid of it. I don't need that you know, those inner vectors in there. So now I have these outside boundaries and things. Now these outside boundaries, I'm going to select all 3 of them and I'm going to group them together. Now I can use the group tool, or I could have simply just hit the letter G on my keyboard for group. But let's go ahead and we'll use the group tool over here. Okay, so now that when the software looks at that, it's 3 individual vectors, but it's grouped together, and it's looked at as one vector. Okay, now for the Waltons, in order for me to trim my text from my boundaries or what have you, I have to convert the text to curves. So we want to make sure that our spelling is correct. We want to make sure that, you know, everything is how we want it before we convert our text and all, so we can edit it properly. Now the one thing I would like to do, I am gonna, before I trim anything, I am gonna select the boundaries and all, and I'm gonna bump them up just a little bit, right about there. All right, so now the Waltons, I need to convert to a curved object. Converting text to a curved object means I'm turning it into a vector that has nodes. If I ever needed a node edit or anything, I now have nodes and I can manipulate this text any way I want. But now that I've converted it to a curve, each of these individual vectors, the inside of the A and the inside of the O and outside, all that is individual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select And notice how I'm selecting, going from the right, holding down my mouse button and drawing from right to left. Anything that little selection window touches, it's going to select. Anything that little selection window touches. If I were to do that and draw that selection window from left to right, it has to be 100% in that window before it'll select it. So if I try to left to right, it won't select anything because it's not 100% in. If it was 100% in, it would select it. So I want to go right to left because I just want the Waltons. I want to select the Waltons and not John and Mary. Here we go. Now again, these individual vectors, I have to group them together as one item. And that way it's looked at. Now I have two items basically. I have the Waltons, and then I have my boundaries around John and Mary. That's two items, and I'm going to be subtracting one from the other. Now, what I want is, what's going to happen is when I clear everything inside the boundary, I'm going to be using the regular trim tool because it's going to end up deleting that boundary and all. But I am going to be clearing the first item I select from the last item, or the second item in this case that I select. So I want to select the Waltons first. That's the item that I want to trim. And then I'm going to come hold my shift key down and select the borders around John and Mary. That's the last. That's going to be my boundaries. And what I want to do is I want to clear everything inside of that boundary away. So when I do that, it's going to clear everything in that boundary away, and basically it closes off the vectors. It redraws those letters around that boundary. So if I don't need the boundary anymore. If I were to select the boundary, I could go ahead and delete it. I don't need the boundary anymore. And what we end up with is we have now this kind of open area where our John and Mary can be carved to create our sign. And so I'm going to come over here, and there's two ways that I can do this. One is a very simple V carve. So I'm going to select all of that, and I'm going to V carve it. No flat depth, just a 0 start depth. No flat depth. I'm using my 60-degree V-bit. I'm running the 60-degree V-bit about 35 inches a minute for the feed rate, 25 inches a minute for the plunge, what you guys and girls I standard recommend for your V-bits. And we're going to calculate that toolpath. And so if we were to V-carve this, we would end up with a sign like this. Now with a sign like this, I could, and unfortunately if I can't, here, let me do it separate so I can paint them different so you can see how it would look. Let's do this. Let's take John and Mary, so I can give them different colors and all. We'll calculate that one by itself. And then let's grab the Waltons, all of that, this guy, and all of that. And if I were to V-carve that, same thing. It's going to just basically do the same thing that y'all just saw. But now what that allows me to do is it allows me to give this a little bit of color to differentiate it. And if I were to preview those toolpaths, we'd end up with something that looks about like that. Okay, and then my border, single line, so it's a vector, a single vector, so it's a profile toolpath. I'm still going to be using my V-carve bit, my V-bit, my 60-degree V-bit, but it's not a V-carve, it's a profile toolpath because we're following a single line, and I'm going to be carving on the line to 1/8 of an inch deep. So we'll calculate that out, and I'll go ahead and give that a little bit of a border color. Let's go with, and we can preview that toolpath, and you know, you can end up with just a very simple text in text type carving. Welcome, Mac Tech. Greetings from Ontario. So all we did was we created a boundary around our inner text and we can use that boundary to subtract or clear the vectors of the back text around it to give ourselves some clearance for that inner text. And last year when we did the class, it was Christmas, it was around the holiday time, so we did a Christmas sign, it's a very merry, and then Christmas was the back text and things like that, and we talked about that. But so this is basically the text in text type procedure. Now, what would happen if I did the raised effect, the island style effect, by creating the entire V-carve toolpath on everything here with a flat depth? Anytime you have a border selected with your V-carve to do that raised effect, you have to, a flat depth is most important. And for the flat depth, I'm going to go with a 0.125 and 60 degree V-bit. Now I do have a lot of flat area here to clear out, so I will use a flat area clearance tool. Now for this, if you don't have one, I highly recommend one day, if you're ever out at Lowe's or Home Depot, not very big fan of their bit selection, but you can order them online from Digital Wood Carver, Tools Today, anywhere, Rockler, and all, but running down to Lowe's and getting yourself a small 1/8 inch end mill. 1/8 inch end mills are nice to have in your arsenal of tools because they get into small areas and things. You can get end mills down to a 1/16 of an inch, but an 1/8 inch is a nice standard little bit to have in there. And the reason why I want to use an 1/8 inch end mill is because I want to get as best I can. I want that end mill to flatten out these areas to the best of their ability that I can get. And so we're going to go ahead and with that 1/8 inch end mill, I want to calculate this toolpath. And if we preview the visible toolpath, and then let's give that just a solid global fill of, I don't know why maroon's my favorite color, but whatever you want it to be, pick a color, any color, but you'll get that raised effect, with your signs versus a V-carve and everything. Now on that raised effect, if we look here between the John, that little piece right there probably is insignificant, and it most likely, in many cases, depending on things, it could chip out of there and stuff. So I would look at something like that, and then I would come back and make the executive decision to delete that little vector out of there and get rid of it and stuff. I'll keep my bottom of my N here, but what I'd end up doing is just recalculating that and getting rid of that little part in there, however it may be. And so that is another way of using the text in text technique versus a text on text. Okay, welcome, David. Yeah, so MacTech says that the Spectra downcut in, now Spectra, that's a massive bit as far as the quality of it and everything. Spectra is a type of ceramic type coating that they use to do really good stuff with plastics and all. Yeah, excellent. And that's an Amana bit, those Spectra bits are. But so that's an effect. But let's take this a step further. Let's come in and back over to our drawing side, and let's change some things up. Let's go ahead and we're gonna take all of these layers, turn them off, and we're gonna create a new layer, and I'm gonna call this let's see here, stand by. what do I want to call this? I don't know. Door hanger, in a sense. Now, let's go and change our size. I'm going to go with a 24 by 24. For you guys and girls that have the mini carver, 18 by 18 or 18 by 24, however you want to do. I'm going to go 24 by 24. Usually on a door hanger, I'm probably about literally a 1/4 of an inch thick material, 1/2 inch at the most. 3/4 is just sometimes a little too bulky, but you know, whatever fancies your boat. I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch sheet. And again, my setup's same. I'm just changing the job size and everything here for a moment. But let's go ahead and let's kind of create some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a little circular shape here. And I'm going to go 18-inch diameter on that. I'm going to move that up to right about there. And I'm going to offset it inward about 1 inch. So I have this 1 inch rim around here. And then I'm going to go into my rectangle tool. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle. This rectangle will go 21.5 is good by, let's go 5 inches. All right. And I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Probably right about there. And again, I'm going to offset that inward. I want to create sharp corners on this one, and I'm going to offset that inward about 1 inch. No. Let's go, let's half that up. Let's go 1/2 inch. There we go. All right. Now, so the first thing I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up combining these two shapes and stuff. But right now I need to keep my inner rectangle intact. I'm not going to trim it and all at this particular moment. But I can go ahead and start kind of cleaning up some of the vectors. So I don't need this here. I don't need this. And these inner guys here I don't need. And then I can open these up here to kind of create that combined border. Here, so I'm just interactively trimmed everything away, but I want to keep that inner rectangle as it is because I'm going to be using that in a moment. Now, on this, I am going to use my draw text within a vector box, and we're going to go with a very simple welcome sign, right? And I do want to stretch the characters both vertically and horizontally, and I really want no boundaries. You know, I really want no boundary. I want it to be extended out as far as it can, or no margins. I'm sorry, I said boundaries. Forgive me, but I mean margins. So I want it, you know, full of big, and I do want it bold. This nice little welcome sign here. And now with this, one of the key tricks to this little step is that I want, let me go back in here for a minute. Bear with me a moment. Yeah, that's good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down my shift key on this, hold down my shift. I'm in transform mode. I double clicked on it to get into transform mode. And I've got some overlap of my letters here. I'm going to space them out, and then I'm going to end up resizing this. So let's go into our edit text spacing tool. And I'm going to hold down my shift key so I can push that spacing out and just separate that. That was good for that click. And let's come over here and single click that. And a little bit right there. Okay, good enough. But now I need to come in, and I'm going to double click on this because I'm going to hold down my shift key so it moves both sides at the same time. And I'm just going to bring this just inside of the boundary a little bit, right about there. Now, one of the key techniques to creating this, it's not really a text-in-text type design, so you'll have to forgive me, but it is having to do with trimming and creating this. So this border here, this border, it's very crucial or key that this border's top line and bottom line overlap my text. So what I'm going to do is put it in transform mode, and I'm going to hold down my shift key so it moves both the top and the bottom at the same time. But I'm going to drag this vertically this way. I'm going to drag this down just so I get a slight overlap, making sure that that border is overlapping all of my text. Okay. All right, so we got a nice little overlap and all. And now on my text is going to be the boundary in this case, and I'm going to be trimming the rectangle to the boundary. And so first thing I got to do with my text is again convert it to a curve. Let me see what these little vectors are right here. A little bit of trash right there and a little bit of trash right there. Get rid of that. Okay, so select on my text, convert it to a curve, and then automatically group it back together. Okay, it's key. Now I want to take my boundary here, and I want to clear everything in, or when I say boundary, let me stop here. Border, this is a border, this rectangular border. My text is going to be my boundary because I'm selecting it last. So select the border first, the text last. That will now become the boundary, and I want to come in and trim, clearing inside of that boundary away. And watch what happens here. When I clear inside of that boundary, what it ends up doing is it ends up redrawing those vectors, literally outlining the shape of the letters. Okay? And so now I could literally take my text and delete it. And what do I end up with? I end up with this nice little cutout here of the same letters, because it literally redrew that rectangle around those letters, giving that same welcome outline. Now I can do my profile cuts and everything, and I can, you know, cut those these parts out and stuff. So now what are we going to do with the upper part here? This is usually where we would put a monogram or something, or a snowman, or whatever the case may be. In this case, let's see what we can do. What can we do? I don't. Let's import a vector, and let me see if I still have that file. I lost a lot of files a long time ago, but let me see if I still have them. So in my backup, let's see if I still have my bold monogram all the way down to the V's, STUVW. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Bear with me a second. Let's go to the letter B's. Okay, I don't see it there either. Am I fortunate enough to... There they are. Alright, so I've got these files, and I shared these in the with you guys in class a long time ago, and if you don't have them and you'd like them, let me know. These are Vine monogram fonts and everything, and they come in different AI, DXF, VPS, PDF, PNG, SVG files. I'm going to use the DXF, and I'm going to grab the letter B, center, because it's going to be centered in this circle. So I'll grab that and import that in. Now when it imports in, it's huge. Okay, it's like 90 inches tall and all. So first thing I'm going to do while it's selected is group it together, and then I'm going to go ahead and size it down, and a lot more. And while it's selected, I'm going to select the inner circle here last, and I'm going to use my alignment tool and align to the center of that last object. And I've got some sizing to do still on it, so let's size that down a little bit more. I'm going to hold my shift key this time now that it's centered. That keeps it centered on the object and everything. So I'm going to come down. Okay. All right. So with that, once again, I just simply going to, this is a vector, and I'm going to ungroup it. I got to ungroup it so I can do some trimming. You can't trim on a grouped item. If you guys ever try that and you're like, why isn't it trimming? Why isn't it trimming? You cannot trim on a grouped item. So you have to ungroup the vectors in order for the trim tool to work. Now for this, I can very simply, if I wanted to, I could clear the inside of the boundary and blah blah blah, or outside in this case. But I'm going to use my, it's 4 clicks, 4 or 5 clicks. I'm going to use my trim tool, interactive trim tool, and I just want to cut out these 2 lines here, and that's going to connect that B to this outer border. Over here, same thing. Connect that, and down here, 1 trim. Oh, when it does that, when it wants to trim away all of your letter and all, undo that and come back, and you see how it's wanting to be testy with me. Zoom in, get it zoomed in. If you have to zoom in, because it's like if it's zoomed out quite a bit a ways, it kind of looks at like, okay, which line are you want me to trim, and it tries to trim everything. It should trim to the overlapping border, but every once in a while it doesn't. So now we have a very simple door hanger type monogram, and now we're going to profile cut this. So let's go over to our toolpaths, and with everything selected, I'm going to do a profile toolpath. And here's the cool thing about the profile toolpath. No, Mike Smith, the classes have not moved to Thursday. Sorry to interrupt my train of thought there, guys. We only have it Thursday because I was out of town on Monday. But anyway, the cool thing about the profile toolpath is, even though that I'm going to be using telling it to machine on the outside of the vectors, it knows that I have inner vectors here. So it will automatically reverse the toolpath for me, and on the outside it's going to cut on the outside of the line, and on the inside vectors it's automatically going to cut on the inside of the lines, and it's going to reverse them. So it'll know to do that. So I'm going to cut all the way through my material, 1/4 inch. For this I am going to use a small end mill, my 1/8 inch end mill. I'm going to be on the outside of the line. I would add tabs to this. There are some big areas and stuff, but for right now I'm not going to add tabs, so I can remove the parts and show you what the sign's going to look like. But we would come back and definitely add tabs to some of these parts so they don't go flying off or things like that. So I'm not going to add tabs for this, but we would normally. And let's see here, groups, multiple open contours. Okay, so this is saying that there's a couple of groups in here that have open vectors in there that that need to be cleaned up or fixed. So I'm going to cancel this for a minute, and let's find out what we've got going on here. So, you know, the software is super smart about telling me about problems, and I can see we're going to have some issues and all, but let's find out here. First of all, let's right click and select all open vectors, and right up here I have an open vector, and if I come up to, it's going to be at one of these corners here. It's either the top, the bottom, somewhere there's an overlap. Usually it can be identified by it's hard to see, like on the computer screen it's probably hard to see, but usually it can, it's defined by the lines just slightly darker than the other. And if we can't find it, one of the most awesome things here is we have a tool now. As of version 9, we have a tool that will help us. It's called the Vector Validator tool, which helps check for potential issues on a vector. And in this case, I can have it search that selected, and right up here at the top, it's telling me that I have an overlap. Okay, and I have a zero length span as well. Well, the zero length span I can get rid of. I have a button here to fix zero length spans. I can get rid of that. And now, because I fixed that zero length span, it also got rid of the overlap on there and cleaned that up for me. So now I should be able to select all open vectors. It's still open. If I search it, there's no errors in there. So now I should be able to come over to my join tool, and I should be able, I've got two open vectors, and after joining I should be able to have one closed vector, and it should close it off for me automatically, so to clean that up. But the Vector Validator tool saved me a lot of time in searching and stuff, trying to figure out what the problem was. So now if I come in and select this again, I should not, if I've cleaned up everything that was wrong, I should not have any further issues, and it should be able to calculate the toolpath cleanly with no errors and things, which it did. So now if we preview this selected toolpath, okay, all right, and now the reason why I didn't add tabs is so I can go in here and I can kind of remove some of these areas to show the finished piece. Double clicking on the waste areas will remove them. Let's bear with me while I click all these out of here and get rid of. Okay, and so we end up with this nice little monogram door hanger. Very simple and easy to kind of create. Now that's not a text in text, what our subject of our class was, but this is just a way of, just like we trim with the text in text, how we create a border around our inner letters and we trim the outer or the back, you know, stuff from the inner. We can create this this kind of effect. Now, what about if it's what about if there is words and letters all, but we're not trimming to other letters? What about if it's a shape and things and stuff and all? But I wanted to before we get into that next step, I wanted to just show you this, and hopefully you you know, like that enough that you may make some of your little door hangers or something every once in a while, because they're really nice. Put a bow in them, you know, so, not a bow, but well, a bow, but you could dress these up with burlap. You know, burlap bows or things like that, make them really decorative. You can, you know, paint them, what have you, and make nice little decorative door handles and stuff. We have a announcement. Burl just sent over to me to make an announcement. For those of you that have signed up, for your Digital Woodcarver customers that have signed up for the owners group meet and greet in October 15th and 16th in Indiana, thank you for that. Right now the venue is half sold out, so there is you know, a few more spaces available and everything. We're half sold out, so if anyone is thinking about registering that, sooner rather than later, so you know, make sure you have a space for you. If you're curious as to what as to what that is, go to the Facebook group, and there's an announcement in the Facebook group, Digital Woodcarver Owners Facebook group, and also on the Digital Woodcarvers website under the news and events. And this is an owners group conference, so if you guys and girls that are attending my class tonight are not Digital Woodcarver owners, we'd love to see you sometime, but this is kind of for Digital Woodcarver owners only. Okay, because it's more so training around our machines. All right, a B for Bishop. There you go, David. Exactly. So very nice sign. But now let's take it let's take it a little bit step further. Let's go back into our design, and in this layer I'm going to go ahead and shut it off and get rid of it, and that way I can have a blank sheet here, and I'm going to create a new layer. And now we're going to I'll call this like a hunting sign or a fishing sign or whatever, something like that. But now this time I'm going to go in to, let's see how good I am. If I don't know if I still have any let's see here if I have any vectors, or we may have to go on to Facebook and grab one, not Facebook, Google. Let's see here, there's a bunch of pictures of me. Well, there's some snowmen. There's a billy goat. Hold on a second. Let's see. I don't know. I don't think I have any. All right. Then we're going to have to go to Google, our best friend Google. We're going to open up a Google browser in a tab. Let's sneak over to Google here. And let's go with a deer vector in Google. And I'm going to go into images. And the reason why I say Google is your best friend when searching for things is because Google has tools that we can use. I love the Google tools because with the Google tools we can filter out a lot of stuff. So with the tools, I want an image that is larger than 800 by 600. I want an image, so I wanted to get rid of everything that's not 800 by 600. Okay, and then that gives me, you know, higher quality images to work with. And let's see. Bear with me a second. Let's do this very simple. One here. Nope, that's not the one. That wasn't the one. Vector stock was the one I wanted, but why didn't it take me to the deer I wanted? That's all right, we'll go with decisions. This is what you get for not being prepared ahead of time, ahead of class. Let's see here. I want something with a little bit of detail, but also something kind of face on, face off. Not the best one in the world, but we'll do that one. Thank you, Gettys. Alright, let's go back into our metric and let's import that. And it would have been nice if I would have seen what the file name was. Bear with me a second. It was called... Always rename your files. Come on, Laney. Oh, I mean cookie patterns. How'd I get in cookie patterns? That's on my desktop. It was from last week's class. It's still wanting to throw it in that file. Okay. So on my desktop, we're going to go into cookie patterns and we're going to find that here. Alright, we're going to zoom into that and we're going to open up our trace bitmap tool. We're going to trace out an image here. And I'm going to go, let's turn our fading off so we can see it. Turn my noise filter up a bit. Alright, now that I've traced that image, I can go ahead and turn that bitmap off. I don't need it visible anymore, and I need to do a little bit of cleanup here. So I'm going to ungroup this. Go into node editing, and woo, look at all them nodes. We're going to select all them and hit D for delete. Click on that one, right click and delete that point. We're going to D for delete to get rid of that. Right click and delete that point. All right. Okay. So now with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of node editing mode, and I'm going to select all that and group it back together, and let's size it up. Size it up. All right. We're going to open up my circle tool, and we're going to come in probably right about there. We're going to offset that circle inward 1 inch. And let's get everything, make sure everything is centered. He's centered. Are these guys centered? They are now. All right, now I want I want the antlers. I want this. Let's go a little bit bigger with him. Hold down the shift key while he's centered and make it a little bit bigger. All I need is a little bit of overlap. I want to bring something that when I connect this together, it's going to hold the top part in, so it's not just flopping around. The lower part, I'm not going to stretch my image. I'm not going to stretch the image to distort it to try to get down here, because I have another vector that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using, it could be an ellipse, it could be a rectangle, it could be whatever you want it to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to literally come about like that. Make sure, line that up and make sure that that's centered left to right. Get that centered how it needs to be. And again, now my door hanger this time is going to have a shape that comes around and kind of emulates this kind of corner here. And so I'm going to be using this as my boundary. Everything just like we did before. But on the deer head, when I put the text in, I want to keep some of this stuff, the lower part of the neck and all, but I also need to clear it around my text. So let's go ahead and create our text. And oh gosh, I don't know what you would put. I don't hunt, so I don't even know why I came up with this topic, but okay. Hunter's fine. Normal margins on him, but I do want to stretch the characters vertically and horizontally, and I want to give it a little bit of boldness. There we go. And let's see here. I don't want it. That's good. So I'm going to take now, instead of offsetting this the way that I normally would with the offset tool, because I don't know exactly what the measurement is, I'm just going to use my Control and Shift key. So if I double click on this rectangle, and put it in transform mode, I'm going to grab this corner box here, and I'm going to hold my Control and Shift, and the Shift is going to keep it centered on itself. The Control key is going to make a copy for me, and as I drag this corner box in, now I'm creating this copy. And again, all I care about is that I just overlap the top and the bottom of the letters. I'll focus on that one. Let's come in here, and I got to move this up a little bit. I need to overlap it ever so slightly. Ever so slightly. It doesn't have to be a big overlap. As long as it's overlapping the letters, it will redraw. It'll redraw around them. But I don't want a big overlap. Just a small overlap, because I'd like to keep a lot of my letters showing. Whatever you cut off, top or bottom, it's going to cut off. You know what I mean? So, you know, I want an overlap, but not a whole lot. And if I have to keep zooming in to get that, you know, marginal line or overlap, then I will. I just need to make sure that it's going to overlap everything. Now, as far as the width here, I'm going to go ahead and hold down my shift key, and I'm going to extend that out a little bit. About like that. Now, with this one, we have a couple of things. With this, let's see here. We have a couple of things. We've got, not only is our rectangles overlapping our outside borders that we need to blend together, but we also need, I'd like the circle to take on the shape of these corners here of the rectangle. And I could just sit there and use my interactive trim tool and trim them away to get that shape and everything. But I'm going to use the subtract tool. So I'm going to grab this outer circle, because it's the one I'm focusing on. And my boundary is going to be last, which is this rectangle here. And I'm going to tell it to clear everything inside of that boundary away. When I do that, you see what happens here is it actually drew the circle upward. It's going to go the shortest distance possible. So it's not giving me the ideal result that I want. So I can't do that. Okay? So what if I were to subtract, if I look at subtracting the second from the first, nope, not going to do that either. So I do have to use my interactive trim tool. I have no choice. Sometimes there's multiple tools, sometimes there's only one. And so I need to basically kind of create this border. Okay. Maybe I want to keep that one. Yeah, I'll keep that and get rid of this and this and that. Okay, so I'm missing something here right there, that line and that line. Okay, so now I've got my outer border. Let me close that trim tool before I click something accidentally. This outer boundary now is taken on the shape of this rectangle, which is fine. Here I've got to decide, do I want this door hanger to have this full round down here, or do I just want to kind of get rid of these, right? So it has this final shape of this, and I like this shape better than the other one. Now up here, same thing. There's no tool that's going to give me a better option than just interactively trimming, and all I'm doing is trimming two lines. This guy here. Notice how my scissors aren't trimming, how it's not opening up. You see how they close? That's because my deer is grouped together. Cannot trim on a grouped item, so you have to ungroup it. The ungroup tool is here, or the U on the keyboard. U, letter U, ungroup, and G for group. So now I can use my interactive trim tool, and I can, oh, don't trim the top of his head off. Zoom in if you have to get, you know, those lines together. And so let's kind of pull that together. Now we got to focus on what are we going to do? What are we to do with the deer hunter? How are we going to do this? Well, the text, I need to convert it to a curve first and foremost, and then group it back together. So now it's an individual item, so now it'll trim properly. And I've got to kind of clear the areas inside of that text where the deer is, because I still kind of want the bottom of the neck and everything to be drawn. I still want that there, but I've got to handle it a little bit differently. So the first thing I'm going to do is the deer hunter is going to be my boundary. And do I do it now? This is where I've got to decide. Do I trim this to my text now, or do I wait until I get my other border created? And I believe I'm going to wait till I get my other border created. And what I need to do here is I've got some of these lines here that I've got to clean up. And let's take our trim tool and let's get rid of, oh, not that. Don't get rid of that one. Oh. Alright, so when they want to be aggravating like that, zoom in as much as you can and see how it just keeps wanting to remove that vector. It's wanting to remove that whole thing. Well, that's fine. I'll leave that there and I'll just trim it. I'll have it redraw itself around the letter R. But for this, I do not want the deer's fur and all that stuff to get right up on the letters, you know, when it keeps them. I want to keep a little bit of an offset. So just like we did with the text in text, we're going to select our deer hunter and we're going to offset it outward temporarily. Outward by, oh gosh, not much, a 1/16 of an inch. 1/16 of an inch. Okay. And that boundary is what I'm going to use to trim the deer to, but my regular text is what I'm going to use to trim the other letters and all to. So let's do the deer first. We'll get rid of that so it's not so overwhelming, like, whoa, what's all that stuff going on? So group that together. While it's selected, group it together. Hold down and select on my deer outline here, and my grouped objects are going to, my grouped objects are going to be this border here, and I want to clear everything in the border, meaning the border around the letters. I want to clear or trim everything inside of that boundary away. Okay, what this does for me is it redraws. The most key part of this tool is it redraws and keeps those vectors closed. So when I get rid of this boundary now, oh, it did not. You see what happened here? They left me with a bunch of open vectors. That was a no-no. So what went wrong? Let's find out. Let's select that. I'm going to select my inner text first and clear inside of that boundary. Let's see what it does. It's just creating inner vectors. Bear with me a second. This is going to come around. My letter is going to be there. And that'll be good. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is what I love about live classes. This gives us a chance to figure out how we would troubleshoot this. So how would we do this? I want to close off this vector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my boundary as some trimming lines. So I'm going to ungroup that. And I'm going to go into start interactively trimming. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and trim this line away, and that. That'll create that inner area, which is eventually going to get deleted here in a moment anyway. But most key thing is I'm going to trim this, and all of that, and all of that. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to trim, oop, not that line, wrong one, zoom in, trim that one away, trim this away. Come in here and clear that off and come up all the way around to here. got some cleanup to do. So that's going to come around. So now if I look at this vector, okay, it's still kind of coming around, and all this miscellaneous stuff is going to be deleted here in a moment. Trim, I'm going to get rid of the lower part of that border and there. So there's my inner part here. Come around and get rid of this and that. So there's my inner part of my deer neck. Get rid of that vector. So when I say there's my inner part of my deer neck, there's that part there and that part there, the fur and all. I do not need that. Let's come over here and trim away this. We're going to get rid of that and that. Now I got to decide, is this too insignificant to keep? I mean, really, let's look and see if there's a better option. Not really. So we're going to go ahead and just get rid of that whole thing. We don't need that there. All right, over here, we're going to trim this inner line away. We're going to come up and trim this inner line away. All the way up here, we're going to get rid of that line for a moment. All right, almost there. This line is going to get rid of, oh, not that one. Zoom in, get rid of him. Nah, hold on. Let's see, what do we want to do with him? We want to... Okay, that looks good. This is going to come around, and if I trim this, then that leaves me with an open vector. There's nothing there for it to close off or connect to, you know, and so let's undo that, and let's take... Get rid of that. Okay. We can get rid of this was a challenging one. I wasn't quite prepared for, right? We're never prepared. All right, let's go in here and okay, so now let's look at these lines here, these fur and all, and let's see where they need to trim off and everything. So this is going to come around, it's going to come in, and I can trim that line away. I can get rid of that border and that. I got one little stubborn piece right there. He's going to come around. Always zoom in, and I'm zooming in and out to so I can look at my design overall, and then I can look at my you know, what needs to get cut, because I'm going to be redrawing my rectangle here in a moment. You'll see that in a second. Now you think I'm trimming all my rectangle lines away, which I am, admittedly, but you know, there's nothing that we could trim away that we can't put back, you know, for the second part of this. This first part took a little bit of doing. You know, there was quite a bit of doing on that. Now this one, this is what's going to throw me off here if I don't do this just right. I deleted something that should not have gone yet. There we go. That's what I was missing. I had to back it up some because I was missing my lines. So we're going to come in here and clean that off and that off. I'm going to come down here and clean that off. These three. Now I need to look at how this shape is going to come in, and I should be able to get rid of this upper part here and here. So that gives me that vector. I should be able to clean out this piece and that piece, and I should have those two individual parts all separated now. That means I can get rid of this lower part here, not my U, just that lower part. Get rid of this, come in and clean this up, and that space in between my original outside border of the letters and the letters themselves, that I'm using that space to my advantage when I'm trimming away these lines in between that gap. This is my letter. Let me see if I can point to it with a mouse. This is my letter, so you can see the text, Dear Hunter. And then this line here was the original offset that was going around the letters, and the gap in between them I'm using my advantage, and I'm clearing out all the lines in between that gap. So we're going around, and this little piece of insignificant scrap right there, we can get rid of it, but I'm coming around and I'm trimming away inside of that that space, because I'm going to be getting rid of that space here momentarily. This is one strip here. This is actually the other, so that can go away. Got one little piece of scrap right there, and if it won't let you delete it by clicking on it, then you can always select and delete it later. All right, let's look at what we've got going on here. This is what happens when you want multiple things overlapping multiple things. If that makes sense. This is my boundary in between here, and then I get rid of what doesn't need to be there. So kind of my continuations and stuff. Alright, almost there. We just got to clean up a little bit of our mess. My mess, should I say. Always cleaning in between that boundary and everything, and then I come back and select what I want to keep and what I want to delete. Now if that cut that I just did right there got rid of everything on that little hook, and so I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm going to get rid of this and that to keep that section, even though it's really close to my letter. That's fine, I'm not stressing it. Okay, now we got this line we'll get rid of, and then I should be able to trim away that corner. Alright, so now I can go through and select the rest of my offset that that I didn't use in the border, and I can just delete that. So I can get rid of these offsets that were created when I did the offset, and get rid of that to get back to my normal text. Okay, so now I'm back. I've still got, I didn't lose any of the detail in the neck and everything. It's going to run through the letters. You can see the vectors here. It's going to run through those letters and things and stuff. I didn't lose that detail. I've got some, open vectors still to deal with. I've got to kind of combine this into that border, because this outer border here has got to combine into that border. And when over here, now here, if I continue on, I'm actually gonna get rid of all that inner rectangle stuff, right? You'll see it kind of going away here. You'll see why in a moment. Okay, so now essentially what we've got is, if I come in here and I look, now I'm not finished with the text, I'm not finished with that, but if I look now and I select all open vectors, I've got one open vector, which is this kind of these straight lines, 3 open vectors, and this here. I've got to figure out what to do with that to close it off. So I'm very simply going to just trim away that line, of course. Trim away this line, and I can't trim away my letter, right? I can't trim away my letter, but I do have to close this vector off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line, and then I can trim away the overhangs just to kind of close that off. Now if I were to right click on here and select all the open vectors, there's still one more. He's right here, this individual line. He doesn't need to be there, he's trash. So select all open vectors. I've still got another one. Now here's the wonderful thing about the select all open vectors tool. If I come in and right click and say select all open vectors, if I can't physically see where that open vector is, I have a selection tool up here, the zoom to selected. We just told the software to select the open vector. Now I can zoom to that selected item, and it'll bring me right to that item that I couldn't physically see before. And so now that I've found that item, we can delete it out of there, and I should no longer have any open vectors. Okay, so I've cleaned up all of that. Oh, welcome, Be Happy. Now, hey Jobbies. But so I've got all that cleaned up. So now my design as it stands is clean again. There's nothing wrong with it. But I need to do something with my text. You know, I've got to still kind of create that tracing or that outline. That's gonna when I do all my profile cuts and stuff like that. So I still got to, even though I had to delete most of my rectangle to be able to clean up the start of this project, I now need to come in and basically kind of redraw my rectangle. Now, what is the trick with redrawing my rectangle? Well, again, I want to make sure that it barely overlaps the top of the letters, and zoom in. If you need that little micro edge or whatever, zoom in. But make sure it overlaps all of them, and at the bottom as well, because however far it overlaps is how much of the letters getting cut off, and we don't want to cut off a lot, right? We want to as minimal as possible. Alright, so that'll be good. And as far as the width of this, I'm going to shift key this out, and I'm going to pull this out a little bit just to try to get this outer border to be somewhat the same kind of thickness or distance, right? You know, all the way around, so it looks somewhat good. And once again, on my dear text, it's still a grouped item, right? If I ungroup it, you know, it's all vectors. If I G for group, it's all group. Now, if I come in here and once again, I want to trim the rectangle, hold down my shift key and select on my text. The text is going to be last, the grouped items, letters. And I want to come in here and trim, and I want to clear everything inside of that boundary away, the last item I selected. And once again, it redraws that rectangle outlining the text. Okay? So again, I come in here and now I can just select my text and delete it. It was used as a border. So now I've got my deer hunter sign. Now, what's going to happen when I do my profile cut on this vector here, but I also have this cut that's overlapping that vector? We can't have that. So anywhere that, you know, you got to remember, this is when this cuts out, it's cutting out in these letters and things. So when it's cutting this area out here, what is going to be cut away? What can we keep? What can't we keep and everything? And there's going to be some of these deer vectors that I might not be able to keep because it's going to profile cut, you know, around them and all. But right now we have issues that are pretty much kind of blocking us. So now I have a choice. Am I cutting the word out, deer hunter, like the letters are getting cut out, or am I cutting around leaving the wood as the letters? In this case, what you see here, it's cutting out leaving the wood as the letters. I could do the reverse of that and cut out the letters, but I don't think it would look as good. So with that being known, I've got to fix some problems, because when these parts get cut out, all of this is gone. You know, these two things here and all. So maybe all of that work that I just did on that deer, by the time it comes to the end of it, it's going to most likely be insignificant. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two items here, and I'm going to group them together because they both are overlapping this shape. And if I select this part of this shape border last, I'm going to clear inside of that boundary. What that will do for me there is it will redraw and close off these vectors so I don't end up with an open vector, you know. And so you can see that. And what I just did is I just bumped those up a little bit. What else is going to be an issue? When all this gets cut out inside of here, this part's going to be gone. It's not going to just sit there and float unless I tie it. If I went through the trouble of tying it in to the other letters, I could. All of these, I could tie these in to these other letters and everything if I wanted to. But how would that? I don't know. You guys throw a poll up or give me some answers. Would it be best for me to just delete these out since they're going to get cut out anyway, or take the time to connect them to the letters so when the profile cut cuts, these items stay in? What would you think? In the comment section or the chat section, let me know. Don't want everybody type at once now. Alright, I'll take a sip of Dr. Pepper while I'm waiting for your answer. Deleted. Alright, so Donnie says just go ahead and delete them because, you know, they're gonna, you know, it probably wouldn't look as clean. The letters, the word hunter, deleted. James jumps in there and says, alright, so we're gonna go through and we're gonna select all of these items that we just wasted a whole half hour on creating. If we'd have known this ahead of time, hindsight is 20/20, right, or whatever. I am going to keep these three, but all of these other ones that would normally get cut out, I'm going to delete them out of there. All right, because most likely it might mess up the word hunter anyway, or fisher, or whatever we were doing. You know, it probably wouldn't make the letters look right, you know, type thing. And Ronnie, of course, Ronnie says deleted, and now William says connect. All right, William, yeah, deleted, agree. So, William, majority rules on this one, buddy. But maybe we'll do a class one day where we connect them together and see how it goes. But nice on that one. All right, let's go ahead and create the toolpath for this and see what in the world we created. Now, here's the thing. Here's the kicker of it all. On the deer, remember all of this stuff here in this big white area is all this stuff is getting cut away, right? When it does the profile cut, it's getting cut away. So my deer head is getting cut away. Question of the day is do I want to create a little outline to create like an outline of the head, or do I want to let the profile cut come in and do what it does? And you know, and kind of cut those out, that effect. But remember now, when it comes, it's going to come in here and it's going to cut all of this away. Me personally, I would prefer it not do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this half here and I'm going to create an offset inward 1/16 of an inch. Not a 16th, that's too small. Let's go with a full quarter. Okay. And same thing here. Okay. Now that's gonna give me a little V-carve area. Bear with me a second. There's a lesson to be learned here. There's something that could happen with this. That was profile cut. It'll be outlined there. Here's the best thing about this software. We can preview. So let's create a profile toolpath and let's see what we've done. Profile toolpath. I'm going to cut through my material with my 1/8 inch bit. I'm not going to add tabs right here. I'm going to calculate this. Reset our preview and let's look at what we've got here. Okay, so it's still cut all that away because I didn't connect anything, so not looking good so far. I'm not happy with it. You know, cut all that deer head away. So that's not the way to go with that. So let's look at our shape here and let's kind of connect some things together. Let's connect some of the dots. We want our profile cut. Let's do some node editing. Quick and simple node editing. I want to keep this outline. Oh, tricky dicky. Hold on a second there. I want to keep, let's see here, if I profile, stand tall there, Junior, stand tall. Hold on a second. I want to connect that. Alright, let's go into node editing and let's do a little bit of cut and trim. So I'm going to right click and cut the vector right on that corner to separate this line from here. And then also here I'm going to node edit and I'm going to cut this corner. All right, what that should allow me to do, is I got to be careful how I close up my vectors because I don't want to create a profile cut where it cuts, you know, all of the other stuff away. I want to kind of salvage this deer here. So I need to, how do I need to do this? I need to connect. I'm going to join together with a straight line. My profile bit will come and cut here. Oh boy. Hold on a second, ladies and gents. Hold on a second. Let's see how we're going to address this. I'm going to undo those actions. I'm going to get back to where we are here. Let's think about this real quick. Oh boy. Could you V-cut the detail? That's what I'm getting at, Debbie. That's what I want. I would love to be able to V-cut the detail of the deer. Have all this V-carved, you know, so we can V-carve it. And it cuts between the lines, you know, so, you know, your mouth, your nose, you know, that's what I'm shooting for. And so I've got to close this vector off to itself. And then, but at the same time, still have it connected. Still have it connected to the boundary, the outer boundary. All right, so let's go into node editing, and let's once again, I'm just going to delete this span. Span is the line between two nodes. And let's see how we're going to tackle this. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to join together with a straight line. And that'll close this off. So when it V-carves, it'll V-carve that detail. But now I need to come up here and it's going to V-carve Oh, okay. Hold on a second, guys and girls. I think I got it. All right, let's take and let's do the same thing real quick. Go into node editing. Let's delete this span. Span is the line between two nodes, and same thing down here on this one. We're going to delete this span, and we're going to take and we're going to select, hold down our shift key, select this vector here, and we're going to join with a straight line twice because it's got to connect this and this. So join with a straight line twice. That will close this off. Okay. Now I need to offset this inward, that same 1/4 of an inch, so I kind of get the same little outline all the way around the deer. You know what I mean, Vern? And then on the deer, I want to V-carve between these guys and everything. So let's... Oh, this is going to be tricky dicky. Alright, so if a V-carve, it cuts between the lines. So it'll V-carve that. I don't want that. I want to skip. Skip to Lou, my darling. I'm going to offset that circle inward. It was 1 inch before. I'm going to go 0.95. Offset inward, just to keep me about, you know, 10 thousandths off that, and that'll create this outer boundary. And once again, you see how everything is overlapping, you know, these vectors and all. If I select these vectors here and group them together, even make sure I get the lower part of the R, the U, all of that stuff, group that together. This boundary, if I select it first and then select this boundary last, I can clear everything inside of that boundary away. Nope, I won't do that. What do I want to do there? I have put myself in a pickle with this class, thinking I was going to be slick. Hold on a second now. This is what I love about classes, but I don't want to hold you guys up too long and waste too much time on this. But it's still, I want to. This is troubleshooting at its finest. All right, so let me here. I'm going to run a crappy toolpath for a moment. Let's V-carve this and see what in the world happens. That's a no-no. Let's get rid of that for a minute. If I V-carve this whole thing, it's going to cut out that detail like that. But then I want to cut away the inside here. So I need to offset that. This will make sense in a second. I think I might have put myself in a pickle. I want to offset that outward by 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch is going to be too little. Let's go bigger. Let's go bigger. 0.1875. Okay, that'll work. Same thing here, offset outward 0.1875. All right, on that, let's go into node editing mode. I think we got it here. You're like, got what? I don't see what he's got. What has he got? Let's cut the vector here. Let's cut the vector here. And then we're going to take that selected vector and join with a straight line, straight across there. That's going to close that area out there. That should allow me to take that vector there and delete it. All right, that gives me, this is going to be a, this area in here is going to be a pocket cut. A pocket cut, or a profile cut, or whatever you want to call it. Over here, same thing. On this offset, we're going to go into node editing mode. We're going to cut the vector here. We're going to cut the vector here. And we're going to join that with a straight line. Again, once again, that allows me to take, oops, wrong one joined with a straight line. We want this one to join with a straight line. That will allow me to take this and delete that. So again, let's go ahead and let's take this guy here and this guy here, and this is going to be, and this guy right here. This is going to be a profile cut on the inside of the line. This time we're going to actually be on the inside of the line because I don't have the outside vector selected. Inside of the line, 1/4 inch deep, 1/8 inch end mill. All right, what that's going to get me so far is this cut. Now notice how my antlers aren't separated up here because my 1/8 inch end mill just could not get through there, right? Couldn't get through there, so it stayed, kept those connected. A smaller end mill may be better, or you can notice this gap right here, you know how it didn't cut that point away. You can make, I could make this antler a little bit shorter so the 1/8 inch bit could get around there type thing. However I wanted to do, you know, or what I mean. All right, let's look at our 3D cut, our 3D preview one time. So we got this outline. I got to fix the little antlers. I'll deal with them in a minute. That's miscellaneous stuff. Now on to greener pastures. This, all of this. This is going to be a V-carve toolpath. This too. Now, I only have a 1/4 inch piece of material. Definitely want to use a flat depth on this, so I'm going to go, I'd probably go 1/16 normally, but let's go 1/8 of an inch, and let's calculate that. Let's preview. Oh wait, oh you goofball. Don't do what I just did, ladies and gentlemen. We don't need... Let's see here, preview the visible toolpath. Okay. Now if we're going to have that outline, so far it's not looking bad. Let's give it a different color than hunter green. Let's go with kind of a brown or something. Not looking too bad yet, but if we're going to have this outline and everything, I think we should have it around the antlers too, right? You know, I think we should have it around the antlers too, so it's kind of outlining the detail of this deer. If we're going to do that, we should, you know, clean it up. You know, so the antlers have that nice pointed outline as well on the top. So far, it's not looking bad. Hold on, we might be able to save this just yet. And how we do that is, this is not going to be a profile toolpath in a sense, more so than it is going to be a V-carve toolpath between these two items here. A V-carve toolpath cuts between the lines, and I did it as a V-carve versus a profile, and I still got to do my little offset to cut the part out, but let's do that. Let's create our offset first so we can screw around. Offset inward, okay. Alright, now if I select this, and that, V-carve toolpath, flat depth, end mill, calculate that out. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Let's cut our profile cuts out, which I created those. That is this one actually needs to be on this toolpath and not that one, and it needs to be here and here. Alright, so calculate that one more time and preview. Alright, we're saving it. Yes, we could create a layer for the deer hunter and save it. You know, and hide it if we wanted to. Absolutely. Now, let's come in and select this. Not these two things. And this is going to be a profile toolpath on the inside of the line, cutting all the way through the material on the inside of the line. I'm not creating tabs for this so that we can delete our waste material, get rid of it. Bear with me. We haven't finished yet. We still got a final profile cut to do. Wasn't a bad save. We're getting there. Oops. Okay, and then the final profile cut. And I could have probably done those two profile cuts in one toolpath together. This is going to be on the outside of the line, and to calculate that, all right, let's give this instead of a maple look, let's go with I don't know, cherry, and maybe a black instead of a brown type thing. All right, wasn't a bad save. It wasn't like that wasn't our initial intent. It wasn't my initial intent when I created this, but at least we saved it, right? You analyze it, figure out what we need to do, and there was a lot that we had to do. We had to trim and clean up some things, and we ended up all that trimming that we did in the beginning. We ended up deleting those items anyway, so they were actually virtually useless afterwards. On this, I probably would make the text a little bit more bold, so the N wasn't so N and U wasn't so girly looking and fragile and everything. Not girly looking, nothing against women. I don't want any sexist emails or anything like that. No hate mail. But dainty. So the H and the U, or the U and the N, wasn't so dainty looking on the legs. I'd probably widen them up a little bit and stuff. But overall, it wasn't a bad save. I need to remove, hold on, somebody says I need to remove, you need to remove the box around the right eye over there. Okay, the box around the right eye. Aha! Good catch, good call. So let's get rid of that box around that eye. And that was, what was the V-carve on this one? That was this V-carve here. Let's recalculate that. Let's reset the preview and preview these toolpaths. The deer has a black eye. Thin, very good. SOT. That's a good word. Dainty, thin, right? I was a loss for words there. And while we're at it, I mean, if we're in there fixing things, let's do that. Let's fix some things. So I want my N and stuff not to be so thin on these lines here. So how am I going to fix that? Well, first things first, I need to ungroup my text so I can work on this. And I'm going to focus on the, which way do I need to go? Do I thin up the inside of the leg or the outside of the leg? Which one's going to be easier for me and everything. So one of the things that I can do is I can take and bump that up, not that much. I don't want to look like a diagonal. Give myself a little meat that way. Over here, I can take this node and all of these nodes, and I can bump that over. I don't want to be too too much where I'm too close to my T and all that stuff. So let's take, and I'm going to undo one of those bumps. There you go. All right, over here, if I grab all of these nodes, use my left arrow key on my keyboard, just a slight little bump. That gives my N a little bit of more meat. Now I got my U over here, so I can take, again, all of these nodes, use my right arrow key, kind of bump that in. You know, now see what that does for me up here. So what I may have to do is take these two nodes here and kind of spread that apart a little bit using the arrow keys on the keyboard. You know, give me that space. And if I wanted to, I could take these nodes, give myself a little bit of meat. Alright, with that being said, let's go back into this toolpath and recalculate it. Alright, let's reset our preview. Let's get rid of the deer's black eye. We got rid of the deer's black eye. We fixed hunter. Oops. Alright, let's see how we did. Now a smaller end mill would give me a much cleaner look. 16th inch end mill would give me a much cleaner look on the letters. But, oops. Oops. That message pops up when you're trying, it's wanting to delete the whole thing. It's saying, hey, you're about to delete your whole design. Alright. Not a bad save. What do you think? Right? Alright. Let's go ahead and open up for some Q&A and everything. And let's go over some general questions. So if you recall, we created three designs. This one being the most challenging because of the way we blended things. But everything that we did in the beginning, all the complicated stuff of the blending, and the first part, we ended up deleting half of the vectors that we created from that. So could we have saved some time by just closing off these, these three lower vectors here and closing off this vector here instead of going and trying to keep that neck area in and all that stuff? We could have probably saved ourselves that 20-30 minutes that we spent on it and everything. But overall, not bad. And however you would do it. All right, so yep, Sodi BSF, forgive me if I pronounced it wrong, says that when we were moving those letters around, he would pull it closer on the inside of the letters so that it keeps the spacing the same in between and stuff. That way, he's saying, like, when we were widening up the letters and stuff, more so we would probably be more apt to, pull the material over on the inside of the letter versus the outside. That way it keeps the spacing the same. But the small little movements that we did still got the a couple thin legs on the U and the N and all, but still it didn't really hurt the look or the spacing. You understand what I mean? So, but yes, you're right on that. Ronnie, thank you. So he also says, when you make a change to a few vectors, can't you just recalculate all versus picking them individually? Yes, I can. I could recalculate them all with the recalculate all toolpath vectors, but if you remember in this whole class, I have quite a few different designs in here. If we go into the preview, if I reset this, if you recall, we had our Walton's design, right? So if I would have recalculated the toolpath, it would have wanted to preview the visible toolpath. Well, bear with me now. Stand by, I got a couple different designs in here. So this is the profile for the border. I'm trying to find the raised text design. Where's my raised text design? That was this one and that one. Raised text, that's the raised text effect. And that was not recalculated for a 1/4 inch end mill. So if I preview that, it might not even cut it or cut all the way through. And yeah, I didn't even cut it because the material is not recalculated. But anyway, long story short, I had a lot of different files in there. If I recalculate all the toolpaths, it would have want to recalculated everything. And so I just selected them individually because we have our B, not Deer Hunter, the letter B in the welcome. So we had our B welcome sign. We had our deer, which were these 4 up here. This profile down below, 5 and 4. And that's, you know, that was that design. And then profile 1, 2, and 3 were another design, so on and so forth. So if I would have recalculated all, it would have tried to recalculate all of them. But if I was just doing that specific design and I made changes, then absolutely I could come up here and click this button to recalculate all toolpaths. Recalculate all toolpaths without opening them up individually. So great question on that. Any other questions on anything related to kind of this, you know, trimming and cutting and offsetting and anything? Any questions relating to that? You guys are making it too easy on me. All right. Let's see here. So it wasn't one actually, for the trouble that it was, it actually didn't turn out too bad. But the whole purpose of that was just to get it to show you about trimming and offsetting. And the text in text, it's the same thing. You're creating a border and you're offsetting it and you're trimming one vector away from another, and then you delete what you don't need, which was that boundary around the Mary and John in this case. And that's how you get that text in the text you know, effect and stuff. Whether you do a V-carve with it, where you just kind of V-carve it, or you do one of those raised effects and stuff, where you do the raised effect design. Know what I mean? Now, I'll be honest with you. Yes, you can. If anyone wants the files, those monogram files, I have no problem with sharing, whether you're a customer or not. All you have to do is email me at sales, S-A-L-E-S, sales at digitalwoodcarver.com. SALES at digitalwoodcarver.com. In the subject line, just say, you know, monogram fonts or you know, files, Vine monogram, whatever, however you want to put it. And I'll be happy to reply back to that email with that file attached for you, because they're pretty cool. So that way I have your email and everything. You can just send it to me, and I can just reply back to you with the file attached for you and stuff. So yes, Debbie and William and whoever wants it. Sales at digitalwoodcarver.com. Now the with this, the text in text looks good. I'm a big fan of the text on text, you know, and we've talked about that before, and they call it stack text or text on text or however you want to do. But there's those cool signs. I mean, it's something different every once in a while. The text in text, basically, you know, in the outlines and stuff, you know, it's just a completely different thing. Have your preferences and things like that, combination and stuff. But if there's not going to be any other questions, if you do want those vector files, you know, of the monogram fonts, they're wonderful. I'd be happy to share them with you. Just email me at sales at digitalwoodcarver.com, and I'd be happy to share them with you. And other than that, if there's no other questions, guys and girls, we are going to call it an evening. Give it a few more minutes. Ronnie, yes please on what? Yes, call it an evening, or yes, you would like those monogram font files. Our brains can only absorb so much. William says, I don't recall, but there were some new text features in 9.5 in dealing with text. Dave Garbett, thank you very much, and you have a great night as well. William, yes. So let's quickly just talk about that, the new text features. With the text tool, one of the key features is, notice that there's no apply button any longer for the text. Now what happens is when you open the text tool, you'll get this little text box here, and that text box changes in size by however, you know, big you put it and stuff. It changes in size based on that, and you can drag it around and position it, you know, where you want the text to kind of start at or be at and things, and that wasn't there before. So let's go with a 2-inch tall text here, and let's say this is the text tool. Okay, and let's first of all, let's turn off here. Let's bear with me a second. Let's move this to a new layer. I'll just call this text. That way I can turn off the hunting sign layer. I can turn off the Waltons. Alright. Now, with the text tool, here's one of the cool features. Now before, whenever we formatted text, meaning like, you know, we manipulated it in some way, we changed the spacing of the letters, we maybe curved it or arced it to follow a banner or what have you. We, you know, if we would have found out that, oh man, you know what, I messed up, I made a misspelling or something, then we would go back into that text tool and sorry, bear with me, I need to close this. We could go back into our text tool, and if I made an error, like if this was supposed to say this was the test tool instead of text tool, so make this capital EST, it keeps that kerning, that spacing, it keeps that curve, it keeps that whatever, you know, stretching and editing we did. And before, that would not happen. Before, if you had to change anything and you hit apply, it would bring the text back to straight text. To show you that really quick, if I go into Vectric VCarve 9, let me get to it. Let it open up. If I create some text, I'm in version 9 now. Alright, so there's an apply button here. You know, I move the text. Let's say I move the text over here. Let's say I stretch it out, and then I come into my curve tool and I give it a nice curve and everything, and I got the formatting just how I want. But oh man, I misspelled this. If I came in here and I came back in and I selected my text and I came in and said, this is test, and get rid of the text, and I click apply, it would change the text, but then it gets rid of all of that formatting that I had done, the curve, the spacing, and the stretching, and this and that. So all of that has now been eliminated. In version 9.5, it keeps that shape and everything. It keeps that kerning. It's wonderfully great. Because now we don't have to go back and sit there and recurve it, re-stretch it, re-space it, redo this. It keeps all of that whenever we have to make changes and all. Okay. All right. So that's, you know, some of the new text features and everything. Tyler Ford, the next class. Good to hear from you. Tyler Ford, the next class will be Monday at 7 p.m., 7:15 p.m. Classes are normally on Mondays evenings, but this past Monday I was on the road. Therefore, we had to postpone it to tonight. But classes are usually Monday. Let's see here. Thank you, James. Ronnie, you guys email me at sales@digitalwoodcarver.com. That way I have your email addresses that I can reply and send that file to. Okay? Sales@digitalwoodcarver.com. SALES@digitalwoodcarver.com. Rochelle says, this may be too complicated for now, but what is the easiest way to have the edges of the sign rounded? A roundover edge of a sign. Well, one of the ways is to get a roundover tool, Rochelle. One of the tools that I would recommend is the white side 2050, I believe it is. Let's see here, white side 2050. Let me see if I'm right. Yes. You can get it at Woodcraft. You can order it online. But it's an 1/8 inch roundover. If you want a bigger roundover, there's different tool numbers and everything. But it's an 1/8 inch little roundover tool. Notice it doesn't have, let me see if I can get it to pop up. It doesn't have a bearing on it. We don't want a bearing. It's got a plungeable cutter and everything. An 1/8 inch roundover. That's one way to do it, is to get that 1/8 inch roundover tool. And what that allows you to do is, let's say that on my sign here that I wanted to do a roundover, I would draw a border, rectangle border, around my board. It would be a profile toolpath. Let me get over to the profile toolpath. Bear with me a second. And let me get rid of, this is a test. Alright, so with our border selected, now that roundover bit is designed to do a 1/4 inch cut. Okay, so we want the cut depth to be 1/4 of an inch. On the bit, we want to, all right, you're about to get a quick lesson in how to add a bit to the tool database, because my roundover is not in here. So quickly, we're going to draw a rectangle. If we look at this roundover, the specs of it, should I say, it's got from the top of the roundover to the end of the bit is 1/4 inch. It's got an 1/8 inch lower ledge here, an overall diameter of 3/8 inch, right? So let's go back into our metric, and we're going to draw, oops, not that metric, this one will be fine. We're going to draw a rectangle. It's going to be 3/8 inch wide, 0.375. It's going to be I'll go a 1/2 inch on that, and I want a roundover internal radius of 1/4 inch. Okay, internal radius of 1/4 inch. Don't you give me a hard time. Internal radius 0.375 inch tall. Hold on a second. All right. 1/8 of an inch, not 1/4 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch. It's an 1/8 inch radius, not a 1/4. I'm an idiot. All right. Anyway, sorry. 0.375. That's how wide it is. 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch tall with an 1/8 inch internal radius. Right. That gives me this funky looking shape right here. If I zoom into it. All right. You can start kind of seeing our roundover bit forming here. If we go into node editing mode, I'm going to take and this is a 1/2 inch up here, so cutting at this line will probably be about 3/8 and all that stuff, but I'm going to cut it right here on the middle of the line. Cut the vector there, and I'm going to cut it down here at the bottom. Cut the vector there. And that way I can delete this upper corner. Whenever you're drawing a router bit, you only need the lower right corner. Now, from the top of the curve to the bottom of the cutter, it's 1/4 inch. Now this is only an 1/8 of an inch, so I need to go into node editing mode because you have to draw these bits to scale. I'm going to cut the vector there, and I'm going to move this line relative to its position on the Y. Up and down is Y. I'm going to go negative down 0.125, an 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And then I'm going to select this vector here, and I'm going to join it with a straight line. Now you can see my router bit taking shape. Okay, so now I should have one solid vector that I can come into my tool database with, and I can say I want a new form tool. You see how it draws out the bit because I had the vector selected when I opened the tool database. So the path step is going to be 1/4 inch. My step over is going to be an 1/8 of an inch, or we'll go 1/8 of an inch, 33.3%. Spindle speed on this bit would probably be about 24,000 RPMs. We work in inches a minute. Feed rate on this, I'm going to go with about a 45 inch a minute feed rate with a 15 inch a minute plunge on this bit. This is the drawing for the Whiteside 2050 1/8 inch roundover bit. Okay, so I'm going to apply that, and now I have my tool. Okay, so let's get back to business here. How do we get roundover? What's the best way to get the roundover on our sign? I'm going to go and let's draw our rectangle again. Let's create our border. Now that I have my tool, it's going to be a profile toolpath. We're going to cut to a depth of 1/4 inch. We're going to use our roundover bit. We're going to be on the outside of the line, but I want, let me see if I can illustrate this easily. Let's imagine we have a rectangle here, and see if I can zoom into this. Bear with me a second. Alright, so imagine I have my square corner here and I'm rounding this over. Well, if I go on the outside of the line, then the toolpath is going to be cutting on the right side of the bit, meaning that the cutter is too far away. So I need to offset it inward by 1/8 of an inch, and my cut depth is only 1/4 of an inch. So that way I'm rounding off that edge. Okay, so what I mean by that is in this toolpath I want to be on the outside of the cut, but I need to step over inward 1/8 of an inch, and that is generally going to be a negative 0.125. Okay, I'm going to calculate this toolpath, and if we look at the 2D view and I go into solid view here, you can see how I'm overlapping that vector line by that 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so if I preview my toolpath, and let's give ourselves some meat here. This is only a 1/4 inch board. Let's go 3/4 of an inch here, and let's recalculate this toolpath. If I preview that toolpath, let's get rid of the color. What I end up with is a nice 1/8 inch, oops, let me get some better quality here, bear with me. Toolpath, preview, let's go extremely high, preview that again. Okay, so we get that nice round over edge. Now that's an 1/8 of an inch round over. So if you want, you know, maybe you're getting a 1/4 inch round over, or a 1/2 inch round over, or a 3/4 inch round over, you just need that bit. It cannot have a bearing on it. It's got to be plungeable. Okay, you got to add that bit to your toolpath, and it's a special form bit, meaning it has a special profile. So you have to draw that profile to scale, and you only need the right side of the bit profile. You got to draw it to scale, absolutely to scale. Okay, and then when you add it to your tool database, you're going to be adding that under a form tool. So when you click new, it's a form tool, and it'll finish off the bit for you and put in the parameters, and you just fill in the blanks. Okay, and so that's a form tool. Anytime there's a special form bit, OG bits, roundovers, things like that. And yes, Grant, you could use a pointed roundover bit, the one that it's almost like a beading bit, has the roundover, then it has the nice little bead point in the center and everything. Absolutely, that's also a form tool. You got to draw out that bit and everything and add it to your tool database. But whatever that is, it's just a profile cut, and you're stepping over. You know, when that bit, when you do outside of the line, that means it's going to cut on the outside of the bit. Well, we want to step over this 1/8 of an inch from the outside of the bit to the inside here, the inside of the cutter. We want to step over that 1/8 of an inch so that it, you know, it's coming in and rounding off that corner of our board. You know, let's try that again. How about that? So it's cutting off that round over of our board and everything. And if I were to simulate this with a little trim, you know, we get that nice round over, right? And so, you know, that's Rochelle, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best way to get rounded edges. I mean, now, mind you, the CNC can do a lot, but a lot of times it's not the best tool for the job. If you have a router table, you use a roundover bit in your router table. If you got a palm router or something, use that. Let your, you know, but you can use your CNC, absolutely. But sometimes there's other tools. Don't try to do everything on your CNC. Spread the wealth. You know, use your tools in your shop for what they're best used for. You know, if you do have a router table, or if you have a handheld router, or something, great. If you don't, and that's the only way that you can get the roundovers and all, by all means, plug it into your CNC. Rochelle, you just got to keep in mind you can't have any clamps in the way. right? Okay, so make sure your clamping method that you don't have any clamps in the way when you're doing the roundover. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for sticking with me that additional 30 minutes, 20 minutes in all, to follow up and answer that question. Hopefully this was something that what am I trying to speak up and talk at tongues? Hopefully it's something you got something out of, and maybe you can pick something up from it. What in the world? Bear with me, I gotta recalculate a toolpath. The reason why I'm doing this is I'm gonna end the note on need that screenshot so Google picks it when I come in and create it. So anyway, hopefully it was something that you enjoyed or got some information from and stuff. And I look forward to seeing you on Mondays. Monday is going to be class. I don't know what the topic's going to be right now. Give me a couple days to come up with that for Monday's class, and then I'll post it out there. Tyler, 2050 is best for when you don't have a straight edge. The roundover, you mean, if you don't have a straight edge? I'm not sure. Tyler, kind of elaborating on that one. And Grant, you're welcome. Thank you very much for attending the class. Everybody, thank you very much for sticking with me through these classes. Your support is greatly appreciated. Hopefully you're picking up some tips and tricks and some little things from them. And hopefully they're not just, too much, too little, too much, whatever. All right, guys and girls, thank you again. Y'all have a great night. If you ever have any additional questions, you can always email me at sales@digitalwoodcarver.com. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are customers of Digital Woodcarver and you're in the Digital Woodcarvers Facebook group, you can always post your questions there and tag me in the question, and I can answer it and stuff. And yes, James, I sure will. I saw your, I will reply to your messenger about our schedule for next week or something and all. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, circle type, signs, etc. Yep, Tyler, that would be good. Absolutely. All right, good night, everybody. Y'all have a great evening, and once again, thank you for your time.